Hey, welcome to the Mario Dattilo Show. I'm your host, Mario Dattilo. I've been investing in mobile home parks and other commercial real estate for years. And on this show, we interview some really interesting and successful real estate investors and business owners. We go behind the scenes on how they do what they do. I know you're going to get a ton of value out of this, so stick around till the end. Hey everyone, I'm super excited to have Todd Dexheimer, my friend from Minnesota, on the meeting with us here today. He is going to be talking about a lot of good stuff in commercial real estate. What I like about Todd is he is diversified. He's invested in multiple property types. He's well seasoned, been in the game for quite a while, and is just an all-around good guy. So Todd, thank you so much for being on, man. I appreciate it today.
Yeah, Mario, really appreciate you having me. I'm super excited to be here. Let's do this. Let's dive in, man.
So I was on Todd's podcast, The Pillars of Wealth Creation, a year ago or so.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah, so it has. I might need to come rip that up again sometime.
Let's do it.
But I also wanted to mention that Todd owns several companies. Most known would be Endurus Capital. And also he is one of the organizers of Northstar Real Estate Conference. And that's in Minnesota, a big real estate conference that goes on every year. I was blessed to be able to speak there last year, and it's just a really good group of people, all commercial real estate. So I would say that Todd is super well networked in the industry as well, just from that conference and his podcast and everything. So let's dive right into this, man. So you are investing in what? Apartments, assisted living? Is that the two right now?
Yeah, two main things. We've got some investments in other assets. Last year we bought a 82,000 square foot industrial / office space, but for the most part, that's our focus is multifamily and then senior living. If a great opportunity with a great operator presents ourselves in something else, we may take a look.
What markets are you looking in right now? What are you working?
Yeah, good question. So multifamily, we're mainly in Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, and in the assisted living right now, we're exclusively in Minnesota and Wisconsin. We'll see about expanding, but I always like to expand slow, move slow. Real estate's a slow game anyway, so let's make sure we move slow, move smart.
It is. Yeah. Taking on too much where you can't handle it can create real problems, especially when you're taking on turnaround properties that need a lot of lift. And I know that's kind of what you do, a lot of value add stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We like big projects that we feel like we can create a lot of value in a fairly short period of time. So definitely.
So how did you get into this, man? Like how did you get into real estate and then ultimately commercial real estate?
Yeah, man. That's a story that takes us back a ways. So back in, it honestly started when I was I used to be a teacher, right? So I was a high school teacher. I was teaching industrial tech, wood tech, metals, automotive, that type of stuff. But prior to that, I substitute taught for a little while. I graduated. There was a little bit of time substitute taught before I got my degree, and substituting super boring. So I started reading these books. And I was reading these entrepreneurial books and kind of put that in the back burner, really loved them, but put it to the back burner because, I was supposed to be a teacher. But very quickly, I realized this is not for me. I think I told my wife, 6 months into teaching, probably more like 6 days into teaching, like I got to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. I can remember still like just we're I don't even know if we were married. I think we were newly married, and I'm like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. And so just reading a lot of different books, I'm like, this real estate seems like it's something for me. I did remodeling construction through the summers. That's how I paid for college. That's how I earned a little bit of extra money outside of teaching, because teachers, I know, surprising, they don't make a lot of money. So it made sense. It ticked. I read a book by Ken McElroy called The ABCs of Real Estate Investing, I believe it's called.
Sure.
And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And so just started doing that. So in 2008, I went and bought my first property after reading books for probably a year and a half. and haven't looked back, man. It's been 2008, started buying these single family duplexes, stuff like that. Did a lot of flips, and then eventually worked my way into apartment buildings.
I cannot see you as a teacher, man. You're too entrepreneurial for that. And I love
I,
teachers. My
I,
mom's a teacher. My mother-in-law is a teacher.
yeah.
Great people, but I have a hard time seeing you be in like in a very structured environment like that.
No, and that's what it drove me squirrely, right? It's just like I couldn't do it. I loved the teaching aspect. I love some of the stuff about it, but that's why I love doing. You mentioned the Northstar Real Estate Conference. You mentioned Pillars of Wealth. That's why I love doing these things, because I still love teaching. I love giving information to people. I really enjoy the impact that it can make and connecting with people that are like, I heard this and it changed the way I think, or man, you've made such a big difference. Like that's amazing when you hear that, and I'm sure you've heard that too. Is like, wow, like that's so powerful. That's what I love about the teaching aspect. But yeah, you're right. Like it wasn't for me. But at the same time, like Mario, look at when you're 18, 17, 18, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You know, you're taking all these little tests that the schools give you, and they're telling you should be this and that and the other thing. They don't tell you should be an entrepreneur.
Never.
Nobody ever says you should be a business owner. That's just not one of the career choices. It's not even possible. When you're that age, at least for me, I'm in a middle-class family, you know, maybe, you know, a little lower middle-class family. Nobody's an entrepreneur. Go to work, get a job, and do the thing that 90% of people do. And I didn't know business owners, and the only business owners I knew were like, I can't do that. Like, I'm not from that type of environment.
Yeah. So you get the itch to get into real estate. How do you actually start doing your first deal, and how do you end up making it into commercial real estate?
Yeah, so my very first deal, I looked at so many houses, by the way. I wanted to buy an apartment building right away, but I
Nice.
didn't know how to do it. I didn't have the money. You know, my desire was to buy an apartment, but single family was the only thing that made sense to me. So I met all these. I knew, okay, let's find these realtors that have this investment type background. And so I can still remember. I feel bad for some of these guys that showed me around to these houses, because I had no business doing what I'm doing. But by the way, if you're listening to this, like, that's what you need to do. You just need to get out there. You need to start looking at houses. I was driving for houses. I would literally put in Carlton sheets, and Robert Kiyosaki and stuff like that in CDs into my car. Now you can just listen to a podcast, but that wasn't available back then. But I'd drive around to these houses and like look at houses. I didn't even know what I was looking at. I was just like, oh, I want to buy that house. Oh, I want to buy that house, and then you start meeting these realtors and they're showing you houses. So that's kind of how I got my start, and finally found a house, made a lot of sense, bought it for actually about 3 houses all at once, pretty much within like a couple of weeks of each other. Crazy.
Yeah.
I had no money, by the way, very little. So my wife and I saved up 25 grandish, and we bought our first rental property. Bless her heart, she allowed me to take all of our savings to buy this first rental property. That between the down payment and the construction, that was pretty much the rest of our money, besides the 4 or 5 grand that we spent on our own house that we were living in. We got an FHA construction loan, 203K loan, to fix that up. That was a foreclosure. The rental property was a foreclosure. Bought that for $65,000, and then I borrowed money from my brother-in-law, and we actually partnered together to buy this house that we flipped. And so I didn't put any money into that deal. So those were the 3 deals kind of all at once. And the flip was a flop, made no money. I think I put in, like 1,000 hours of work, and I made maybe $1,000.
Hey, but you made money.
But I made money. We did make money. I don't even know if I ever got that money, quite frankly. But
better check with your partner on that.
Yeah, check with my partner. Maybe he owes me $1,000. The single family home that I bought, though, for a rental, still owned to this day. We bought it for $65,000. We put another 15 grand into it. I did all the work. I shouldn't say I did all the work. We did all my work. My wife was there. My parents even came and helped me out for a couple of days. I had some friends that came and helped me out. That's just how it goes at the start. You just got to get stuff done. And we were able to then refinance that. I met a couple connections that helped me get a refinance done, and we pulled money out of it. And this was during the crash, by the way, that things were already, people were running for the hills. And somehow I was able to refinance, pull some money out, and then continue to repeat that for quite a while. I did 150 fix and flips, and I had about 100 rental units, mostly 1 to 4 family, 13 unit, some small stuff like that. And then
were you self-managing all those too?
Self-managing. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Self-managing, managing all the flips.
That,
I mean, oh boy.
100 single family rentals. You earned it.
Single family and duplexes and fourplexes and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it was, a lot of work. And the market wasn't as easy then as it is now, right? It was still easy. I can't say it was too hard, but yeah, eventually I just said, what am I going to do? Do I want to keep doing this? No, this is not, I don't want 1,000 1 to 4 family rentals. I just don't see myself doing that. And so what do? And the most logical next step was to go bigger. And so that's exactly what I did. Started going bigger.
And so then you started looking at multifamily, larger multifamily.
Yeah. So I started looking at multifamily, started looking at smaller stuff, 10 unit, 20 unit,
sure,
type buildings. And honestly, I hired a mentor, Trevor McGregor, a mindset kind of coach. And I just needed to get out of my own brain more than anything. I knew enough about real estate and what I needed to do, but I couldn't get out of my own way to go to the next level. And honestly, it was him that I was talking about another gentleman that owns a lot of rental apartment buildings. And I said, I want to do that. I got to buy a couple smaller buildings, just kind of work my way up, but I want to get, 100, 200 unit building. He's like, why do you need to wait? I said, well, I got to get the experience. He goes, you realize that guy you're talking about bought 3 single family homes, and then his next deal was a 150 unit apartment building. And he's like, you are way smarter. You got way more experience. There's no reason you can't buy a 150 unit apartment building.
It's all in your head, man. It's all in your head.
It is. I'm like, you're right. So quickly my paradigm shifted, and I went out and I didn't buy 150, but I went out and bought an 84 unit. And within a couple months, I had a 120 unit under it and purchased. So,
that's awesome.
Within probably 4 to 5 months of him telling me that, I owned 204 new units.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people spend a lot of time trying to plan and prepare and learn. And it's super important to get your education, understand what you're 100%. Doing, because you can make bad mistakes. But a lot of times people know more than they realize, and they just have to start taking action, looking at deals and underwriting deals and making offers. And you learn that way. I mean, you're going to flop, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to screw up bad, but that's how you really learn how to do the craft, right? I mean, you can only read and learn so much. You got to actually just go out and do it. And you can do bigger deals, better deals than you realize if you just work it. I mean,
exactly.
That grit, that work ethic, a lot of times just pushes you right through all the challenges.
Yeah.
Sounds like that for you.
It is just, you got to take action. I know there's some very well-educated people that I know. They've went to all the conferences. They've hired mentors, one-on-one mentors. They've read all the books, and yet they still don't take action, and they wonder why they're not successful. And it's because they're in their own way. That you just got to get out of your own way sometimes. You have to take action. There's no point in knowing all this if you don't take action. The people that are successful are not reading every single book. They're not going to every single conference and hiring because they're taking action, right?
Right.
And like you said, you still got to be prepared. Like, listen to this podcast, read some books, but you have to take action. You're going to learn on the field. That's just how it is.
Yeah. I actually have heard several people talking about like their systems and KPIs and all this kind of stuff and hiring people to help them do calls or help them to do all this different stuff. And I'm like, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you the one on the phone? Why aren't you doing the mailers? Why aren't you doing all the work? Like, well, I just got so much going on and I just need to make sure that I keep it consistent. Like, what else could you possibly have going on if you don't own any buildings yet? So
Right.
really that should be what your main focus is the marketing and lead gen and focusing on finding deals. And if you're going to get help, get it in the admin side, get it on the stuff that doesn't matter, because just taking action and looking at deals is where you're going to get that first deal done. So, analysis paralysis, and also just a little bit of fear. I think people are afraid to pull the trigger, or they don't really want to talk to people because it's not their strong suit. But shoot, you're going to be better. You're going to be better than any VA is ever going to be at cold calling and talking to owners and all that. And, at some point, you might hire somebody to help you with that. But in the beginning, you gotta hit it hard so you know what you're doing. So
100%.
Good stuff. So what got you into, I understand apartments. That's a clear graduation from single family, small multifamily to larger multifamily. What got you into the assisted living facilities, and what's kind of the attraction there?
Yeah. So I've seen the demographic studies, right? I know the baby boomers, and that certainly they're coming. And the wave is, quite frankly, it's still not even here yet, but it's going to be a big wave, and it's going to go for a long time. So I knew all that, and I knew I wanted to be getting into that industry somehow, some way, but just didn't know what that looked like until I had a friend of mine, and now my business partner, Justin. He reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I got this assisted living deal. I want you to take a look at it." And I said, "No way. I have no interest in that. That's just not up that's not a niche of mine. It's not up my alley." He's like, I think it's a great deal, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a look. That's fine. Kind of pushed it aside, didn't look. Calls me up like a week later. "Hey, what'd you think of that deal?" I'm like, sorry, I've just been so busy, I haven't looked at it. Give me another week. Calls me the next week. What do you think of the deal? I'm like, I still haven't looked at it. I'll tell you what, I'll look at it and I'll get back to you.
You jerk.
Right?
Like I've never done that. Yeah.
So I look at the deal and I'm like, holy crap. This looks like a really, really good deal. I wonder if this is true. So I have a conversation with him. We walk through the whole deal, go tour the properties. I'm like, you know what? I've got some cash sitting around. Let's do it. So bought a smaller building. I had the capital sitting around. It was a couple $100,000 for the down payment, and we bought it. And the cash flow was really, really strong. I think the first 6 months out of the, sorry, not 6 months, the first 9 months out of the, investment I made, which was like 200, I think it was 250, made about $120,000.
Nice.
I thought, okay, this seems to work. And so we started buying some more, and started buying more. And so now we own about 350 units. What's the traction? When we're talking on the financial side, we're talking about very strong cash flow. We're buying these buildings for a very good price. The market's soft right now. And the market's soft because of COVID. Yeah. COVID really did a number on senior housing. A lot of seniors stopped moving into these places. Quite frankly, you couldn't even move them in because you couldn't do showings. Sure. Couldn't allow people into the buildings. So you couldn't do showings for a long period of time. And naturally, what happens in senior housing, especially assisted living, the average age is 82 years old. Average age of an incoming resident is 82 years old. So guess what happens? People die naturally, right? COVID or no COVID, they're still going to die. And if nobody's moving in, what happens?
Your occupancy plummets.
Right. Occupancy plummets. So we're finding these buildings with low occupancy, burnt out owners. They had to spend extra money on PPE. They had to do all these things to make sure their buildings didn't have a COVID outbreak and they're burnt out. And so we're getting these opportunities presented to us that, just a year ago would have been, double the price.
Wow.
And so we're able to come in, and still, even to this day, we're able to come in. Now it's starting to stabilize.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not maybe seeing quite as good of deals presented to us, but we're still getting great opportunities. We're getting seller financing options. So I've got 2 deals under contract right now. I can't talk too much details, but sellers financing on one of them, sellers financing about 14%, the other of the down payment. So I'm getting bank loan at 80%, and I'm getting seller financing for another 14%.
Nice.
So I got to come up with 6%. The other one's just a hair less than that.
Todd, that's pretty high loan to value compared to what I would have thought you would have said for assisted living. I would have expected assisted living to be lower loan to value just due to the market risk and all that kind of stuff. And with COVID and all that,
I'm buying these properties at low occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
So 75% or so occupancy.
Yep.
Yet at that occupancy, I'm buying it at an 11 cap.
Nice.
That's where
that's
the
strong.
risk is definitely not quite as high, because I'm buying this asset at a 75% occupancy, at that occupancy at 11 cap. And so if I can get the occupancy up to 80%, now I'm at a 15 cap. If I can get it up to 90%, now I'm at a 20 whatever cap.
Strong. That's really
very
strong. Yeah. So the lender's looking at it saying, hey, this is a low risk deal for us. We're coming in with a professional, experienced operator. Yeah, you're buying it cheap. So yeah, it might be 75 or 80% loan to value, but it's more like 75, 80% loan to cost, because your value's significant. You're buying it for significantly under market value. I like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And we're trying to buy for underappraised value of just the real estate. So we bought a portfolio in Wisconsin, and we bought it for $13.35 million, and the appraised value came in at $17.85 million.
That's great.
Just
so
the
you're
real
walking
estate,
with a
not
ton
the
of
real
equity.
estate business.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So the assisted living you've got, so do they typically split out the business and the real estate in the offers? I mean, are they being valued in 2 different ways, or is it all combined like you would have in multifamily?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the broker you're going with. If you're dealing with a business broker who's used to selling businesses, they're going to break it out. If you're going with a broker who's used to selling real estate, they're not going to. So you're buying assisted living on EBITDA, and you're also buying it on cap rate. So it kind of depends on who's wearing the hat, really.
Very unique. That's really unique.
It is interesting
in real estate. I mean, typically it's a cap rate. There's a few businesses, or there's a few properties that are similar to that, but not many. That's cool.
Yep.
So it's better. I mean, are you targeting the brokers who are selling real estate then, because they're not doing it on multiples of EBITDA? Okay.
We like targeting the brokers who are selling the real estate, because we feel like the business brokers we're typically not even actually in the ballpark with the business brokers.
Interesting.
Or going direct to seller too.
That's a really good niche. It's a really good property type. And especially from an operations standpoint, is that something you're managing in-house, or do you have a third-party management company running those?
Yeah, we actually have a third-party property management company running them. It operates very similar to multifamily. They're hiring all the staff, and we pay them a monthly fee. We have asset management calls, just the same. We do a little bit more. So my business partner is big into leadership, and so he does some extra calls, leadership calls with the house coordinators at every property. We do definitely a little bit more hands-on, but the biggest risk, the biggest challenge on assisted living, it's not, can we get people in the door to pay rent? Because we certainly can. We can get residents to fill those units, but it's getting the right staff in to make a good environment. And that's the biggest challenge. And of course, in today's environment, it's even more challenging. So that's our biggest risk is can we find good people to continue to work at the properties?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably just with the high demand for good people in every position, plus the cost of wages going up, I would assume,
Yep.
and you can correct me if I'm wrong, assisted living is going to have higher payroll, higher, a lot more staff than you have at most other property types, because it's really a business operating inside of that as well. So, yeah, finding good people
Well,
are going to be good to
I'll give
old
you an
people.
example, Mario. For a 30-bed building, our payroll is about $600,000.
Wow.
So think of if you had a $600,000 payroll for a 30-unit building.
What's the rent look like?
Well, there you go. The rent's a lot more too. I mean, you're looking at about 5,000 a month per
Jeez.
resident.
What kind of expense ratio are we talking? Typical.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the sizes of the building. So typically, your expenses are going to be 70% to your
Sure.
income, sometimes a little bit more depending on the size of your building. It's going to be more if it's a smaller building, it's going to be a little bit less if it's a bigger building.
Makes sense, because that includes food as well, right?
It includes food and
Care.
all that care, medical, all supplies, all that kind of stuff. And so it also depends too on the level of care.
Yeah.
So the higher level of care, of course, your expenses are going to go up.
Where are yours? Are yours more on the higher level or the lower level of care?
More moderate level, yep.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense, especially unless you really want to get into the medical side. I would want to
Correct.
definitely be on the moderate end. So yeah, that, finding someone not only who's, got the qualifications to do the work, because
That's key.
obviously you need people who have, a lot of times they have actual qualifications, not just,
Yep.
Work history. They actually have to have, they have to be licensed or whatever. But on top of that, they're actually good with people. And
Yep.
that's hard, especially if you're not the highest paying company in town. You get some
Yeah.
larger assisted living facilities. You get, they've got bigger budgets because they're, REITs or whatever running them. So yeah, totally get it. That's really interesting, Todd. So what's your role in the whole thing? And you're syndicating these, correct?
Yeah, we are. So that's kind of my role. So my role for both Endurus Capital and VitaCare Living, which is our assisted living, is on the capital side. So I am focused with the multifamily. I'm very focused on the capital stack. I'm very focused on getting our passive investors, right? I'm very focused on that syndication aspect of it. And then I'm focused on the construction / asset management side on the multifamily. I've got a big, long history of a construction background. And so I'm focused on that. So in the assisted living, I'm very focused on the whole capital stack. So the financing and the syndication, and then again on the construction. Not so much the asset management. That's more of my business partner on the asset management and sourcing deals and that type of stuff.
So what's the world looking like right now with the equity in the equity markets, syndicating? I mean, what does that look like right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were just talking about this with my business partners because we are in the middle of doing some raises, and I can talk freely about the one we're doing right now. It's a 506C, but we did a raise, and so part of this is we just did this previous raise was an $11 million raise, and we got it all done fairly quickly, but the market is shifting quickly and stocks are just plummeting. They're going down so fast. Bitcoin's going down, but real estate is actually doing great, right? In pretty much all aspects of real estate, mobile home parks, self-storage, like everything. And so real estate's doing great, but people are still like, I don't know what's happening here. So we're feeling a pullback. We're right now in the middle of doing this raise, and it's not that big of a raise. It's a $4.8 million raise. But we're seeing some investor hesitancy right now because of what's happening in the markets about putting their money into deal, or where they would have, that investor, I would have expected them to do 100,000 and they're only putting 50,000 in.
Sure.
So it's just kind of interesting.
How much of that do you think has to do with interest rates and kind of inflation and what people are concerned about in
Yeah,
that realm? You think it's
I,
a lot of that?
I think it's a lot of that. I think it's just a lot of uncertainty in the market. You know, you got Ukraine, is this going to be World War III? You've got interest rates. Are they going to go up to 10%? Or you got inflation. Is that going to be 20%? Is like, what's happening here in the world? Is the stock market going to crash, which then causes a recession? And, you know, who knows what's happening? I think a lot of people are just kind of like, let's just wait. Let's just chill back a little
Sure.
bit and let's see what's going on. This feels again like 2007, 2000, you know, it feels like
Yeah.
that time again. I personally don't think it is, but I think a lot of people are kind of feeling that way or wondering if it is.
Yeah. And a lot of times the sentiment causes things to change. So where we
Yeah.
go, hey, I don't know, it's getting a little scary. All of a sudden you get a lot of you get equity pulling back, you get lenders kind of going, I think we'll go a little bit lower loan to value. I think we'll be a little bit, you know, a little higher interest rate,
Yep.
obviously. And they just get more, everybody gets a little more conservative. And what does that do? It accelerates, it creates more issues in the
More
market
fear.
because yeah, more fear and it spirals. So yeah,
Yep.
it actually just investor confidence, lending confidence, all of that affects the real world too. So
Yep.
because just like what you were saying, you know, if you're out typically raising, you know, raising capital and it's relatively easy and you're offering a call it 8% pref or something, preferred rate of return or something like that, and everybody starts going, I don't know what happens. You need to make the deal more marketable. And I'm not talking about
Yep.
you directly. I'm talking about in general,
In general.
the capital raising world. They have to make the offering more marketable for their investors. So then that
Yeah.
means the capital cost goes up, right?
Yep.
And then so it just affects everything. And so yeah, and then lenders start saying, hey, we need more reserves up front, interest reserves. And so now it takes more capital to buy that same property. Plus, I mean, it's just a lot of different things that can kick in just purely on confidence. And so
Yep.
yeah, I feel, yeah, I think there's definitely some reason to be concerned just with interest rates ticking up. That will put some people under that are actually good operators. There will be people who, and I've talked about this quite a bit lately, but you know, there's good operators out there that are going to get slammed because they would have bought something on very short-term debt, typically a bridge loan, 2 years, something like that, interest only with a balloon at the end, and they overpaid for it. And
Well, yeah.
you know, it
They were
can be ugly.
expecting 3.5% interest, and now all of a sudden they're going to pay 5.5 or 6%.
That alone can wipe you out when you're buying something at a
Right.
price point that you were stretching for. So yeah, I think it definitely means that we should be cautious in what we're buying and make sure we're buying things that make sense, and especially have good debt structure and equity
Yep.
structure to make sure, because again, they could be a great operator, they could implement their business plan properly, but because of their debt structure, they could get caught at the end of the movie, we'll say, and not be able to refinance. And now they're in default, even though the property was cash flowing well and doing well. So yeah, but I think in general, it's people are definitely holding back a little bit. They're a little concerned, which is fine. But I think, you know, deals will definitely speak for themselves. One thing that I think a lot of people forget about is 2008. Like, we, for a long time there, people remembered it. It was fresh in their mind. But I'd say in the last 4 years, people have kind of forgot what it's like when the market tanks. It's like everybody pulls out. It's overnight. The light switch turns off and lenders are like, yeah, we're not lending on real estate. And investors are going, I'm not investing in that. And you see, and we talk about it, but I remember the feeling because I was in real estate at the time, and it was like people were just, they wouldn't touch it. So, and it's a great opportunity if you've got access to that capital and you've got experienced long-term relationships with these equity partners, so that when that time does come, as soon as they're confident enough, you can go in and start buying that stuff up, hopefully before other people are confident enough to buy them, you know, and you can pick up some really good deals. I mean, that's where wealth is built, is,
That's
you
where
know,
wealth is built.
and everybody's scared being there buying.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I'm really trying to start to focus more on. I mean, my focus has always been on capital raising, but I'm really trying to focus on our capital sources. And so right now, a lot of my capital sources is low to moderate net worth and liquidity. And so these are your investors that can put, 50 to 200, maybe 300,000 into a deal. And certainly we're looking to continue to build that, but we're also looking to build our ultra high net worth network. And so those are the people that can put in, $1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million check into a deal, and they don't even think twice about it. So we're trying to really build our relationships with institutional players, build our relationships with family offices. So we have multiple buckets we can pull from. And that way, exactly what you're talking about, when opportunity does come, and it might be this year, it might be next year, it might be 10 years from now. I don't know when it's going to be. We don't know, but we know eventually we're going to have a market that's going to have some softness to it. And so let's be ready to deploy that capital. And we can't deploy capital if we don't have capital.
And you have to educate the investors on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not focused on that, if that's not if somebody on your team is not, that's not their main focus, it needs to be. And somebody on your team needs to take hold of that. Maybe it's you, and you need to figure out, how do we grow our database in order to take more deals down. And it's also building relationships with lenders too. And so we're trying to do that. We're trying to really build a strong credibility and strong relationships.
Yeah, it's a matter of educating your investor base, and so that they start thinking the same way you do, because you may be running into the fire and they're all trying to run out. Well, that's a problem. So you got to get them all looking at it like, hey, us being firefighters can be very profitable, but we all got to be carrying the hose together. You got to bring the water. I'll bring the hose, but you need to bring the water to put out that fire. And so it's definitely a good time to be doing that, and getting investors that have that same view versus people who may be running, when they should be running in. So interesting, a little bit off topic, but you and I met in Minnesota. We're both from Minnesota. And we met at a dinner that Ron Orr had put on. So I got to give a little shout out to Ron Orr. Ron Orr is the guy behind the scenes that puts a lot of people together. There's a lot of business partnerships, deals, friendships, and relationships that have been established. But quietly behind the scenes, he's like the glue. He puts a lot of people together. He's like a master networker, isn't he?
The puppet master, right?
He is. He's moving pieces. And nobody knows who's doing it, but it's so I got to give a shout out to Ron Orr, because he's actually the reason why we know each other and why we're friends. And so he's been just a rock star in both of our lives, and is like I said, he's made some really awesome relationships for me, including this one. So
and that it goes to the power of building good, strong networks, though, right? I mean, it's we haven't done business together, you and I, but I know we will at some point in time. We will refer investors to each other. We will refer somehow we're going to be doing business with each other. I know we will. That's the power of making good connections with people. And that's, Ron was the connector there. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are connectors, and make sure you're adding value. Right. And I think you and I are both willing to add value. You came up to my conference, added a ton of value, super awesome. You've been on my podcast, now I'm on yours. Like you, I feel, are the same way. You're willing to put yourself out there to add value to people, knowing that eventually you'll probably get it in return. But if not, you just meet some cool people along the way.
That's right. Yeah, totally agree with you. So can we just quickly talk about the Northstar Real Estate Conference? And I don't want to make it like an ad. I know you just had it, so you're not even pushing it right now. You got a whole other year to promote it. But can you just kind of give the 30-second high level of what is the Northstar Real Estate Conference, and like who are the people speaking at that?
Yeah,
or who should be at it too?
Who should be at it? Yeah. So we've been constantly tweaking it over the years. And so we're just constantly trying to find what our audience really wants. And this year we did it a little different. And again, I just keep kind of playing with it and trying to decide. So last year we talked all about really just a lot of different commercials. So like I said, you came in town, a lot of people came into town and talked about their niches, and really added a ton of great value. This year, what I did differently is I called it an advisory summit. And so I had specifically lenders, I had real estate brokers, I had property managers, I had anybody you would put on your real estate team. They showed up and they were the ones up on stage. We actually went through an actual deal that we are working on right now. And we went from start to finish. I brought on the mortgage broker that's getting the loan done on it. I brought in the property manager that's going to be managing it for us. I brought in and also do the inspections for us. I brought in the broker who found the deal and sourced it and brought it to us. Brought in our insurance agent, brought in our cost segregation guy. So we brought in all these people, and we were up on stage, brought in my underwriter up on stage, and we're talking through how we got this deal, how we sourced it, how we're financing it, all this stuff. And so just trying to play with it, but who is it for? It's for anybody who wants to learn how to do this business and how to take your business to the next level. We talk a lot of mindset and really push how to become extraordinary. I talk to the whole audience about, it's so easy to be average. Everybody can be average. Most of us can be above average, but very few of us want to become extraordinary. And maybe we want to become extraordinary, but we don't put the effort into becoming extraordinary. We don't actually put forth that. And so we settle for what everybody else is, instead of lifting ourselves up and being a part of the high achievers that really want to truly make a difference in the world. And so that's who the conference is for. People want to take their business, their success to that higher level, that next level.
Love it. Yeah, it was an awesome conference, and I totally saw what you were doing with it, and you're not manipulating, but changing the structure around a little bit. I like what you said you did. I mean, you pretty much brought in your entire team, gave everybody an inside look on a real deal, and you introduced them to all the different key players in a transaction. And we both know that these commercial real estate transactions can be very complex with a lot of people involved. I think in the deal that we're closing later this week, we've got 4 attorneys, and this is on our side as the buyer only. We've got land use attorney. We've got a environmental attorney. We had a securities attorney, a real estate attorney, probably missing some attorney in that list, but just in one transaction, and so these start to get very complex, and the people on your team are super important, and having experts in those areas. So being able to listen to those experts and hear directly from them is, I can see, very valuable. So Todd, one thing I really like about you, man, is you are a big time educator. You give a lot, you teach a lot, and both through the conference, but also your podcast. How can people get a hold of you, whether it's to do a deal with you or learn from you or whatever?
Mario, appreciate that. Thanks a lot for that shout out. That means a lot. So if they want to listen to the podcast, of course, after they listen to this, Pillars of Wealth Creation.
They need to finish this entire episode.
Yeah, the whole thing. Well, and every other, make sure you
before you finish every single is on the top. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Pillars of Wealth Creation is the podcast. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts. We've done over 500 episodes now.
Jeez.
So we've been going for a while. And if you want to learn more about what it looks like to invest, or just want to reach out, quite frankly, and have a conversation, I think the best way to do it is to go directly to my Endurus Capital website. So it's Endurus.
Can you spell that?
Yep, EndurusCapital.com. So it's ENDURUS Capital, all one word, .com. And feel free to also reach out to me on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm certainly on both of those networks as well.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun, man. And I'm looking forward to doing deals with you in the future. And I'll definitely hit you up when I'm next time up in Minnesota. We'll get together. So thanks again, man. Hey guys, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for listening. I hope you got out of this as much as I did. I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review so we can reach more people. Jump over to mariodattilo.net and find out what else I got going on. Be sure to connect with me on all the socials, and I'll see you on next week's show.